Chapter 4, 20 minutes. It felt like hours, but it wasn't. Claire found out later when she finally dared to look at her phone again and saw that less than 20 minutes had passed since they pulled themselves into the crawl space and sealed the hatch behind them. Back then, however, time stretched thin and strange, each second carrying the weight of what might happen next. She didn't hear anything. No roaring, no footsteps, no screeching metal or no alarms were blaring close enough to matter. Only the quiet hum of the building settling in on itself, pipes tapping softly as temperatures shift, the metal expanding and contracting. Somewhere far away, something heavy moved, its sound so distant it felt almost imagined. Claire remained completely still. Liam was pressed against her side, his knees up, his sketchbook clutched so tightly to his chest that his knuckles turned white. She could feel his heartbeat through her arm, fast at first, frantic, then slow, reluctantly easing as the silence continued. Her own body did not relax. It couldn't. Silence did not mean safety. Silence only meant that nothing had found them yet. A tiger is gentle on its paws. In India, people often don't even know when it catches them. For a cat of that size, they are impossibly quiet. She had to stay calm, not to upset Liam. She counted breaths instead, in through her nose, out through her mouth. Quiet, control. She rested her hand lightly on Liam's back, steady pressure grounding him without drawing attention to them. Minutes passed, nothing happened. The absence of sound became its own presence, heavy and watchful. "Where is Mike?" The question slipped in and refused to leave. Mike always answered the radio, always. Even if it was only to complain or crack a tired joke about another double shift. He had worked zoo security for years, long enough to know the rhythms of the place after dark, long enough to sense when something was wrong. He should have been the first voice she heard when systems shut down, the first barrier those young men would have run into. He should have been locking gates, calling for backup and securing the staff. He hadn't answered. Claire swallowed. Don't go there, she told herself. Speculation was poison. Panic fed on it. Still, the questions stacked up. If Mike didn't answer, where was he? And who had been on the radio? Teenage voices didn't operate emergency systems. They didn't talk about tests and private overrides unless someone had let them. Her jaw tightened. This wasn't an accident. This was negligence wrapped in arrogance, and handed the keys. Liam shifted beside her, his shoulder brushing her arm. She glanced down at him, careful to keep her face unreadable. "You okay?" she whispered. He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the darkness ahead. Is it gone, Mom?" She chose her words carefully. "I don't hear anything nearby." That seemed to help more than false reassurance. He nodded again and leaned into her just a little. They waited. Above them, far removed from crawl spaces and service corridors, the city continued as it always did. Cars moved through intersections, people talked. Lights flickered on in apartment windows as evening settled in. New York didn't know yet. It would. Meanwhile, the zoo was coming apart. Claire sensed it in fragments, not silence exactly, but disruption. The usual background sounds, the low electrical hum, the faint rush of ventilation were uneven now. Some cut out entirely. Others surged and faded like an irregular heartbeat. Power had been rerouted, or it had failed. Either way, it wasn't controlled. She thought of the young men again. How much damage had they done? Were they still alive, or were they hiding somewhere, just like she and Liam? She pulled her phone from her pocket and dimmed the screen to its lowest setting. No service. No data. Emergency calls still showed as available, but calling meant light, noise, attention. Not yet. She checked the time and slid the phone away. Liam's fingers twitched against his sketchbook. "You don't have to draw," she whispered. "I know," he said softly. After a pause, he added, "It helps me think." She understood that better than he realized. They stayed where they were until her legs cramped and the cold from the metal floor crept into her bones. When she finally shifted, she did it slowly, deliberately, careful not to make the hatch creak. Still nothing. No animals, not even the teenagers. That frightened her more than the noise ever could. At last, she made a decision, not because it felt safe, but because waiting forever wasn't possible. "We're going to move," she whispered. Slow and quiet. Liam nodded. She cracked the hatch open just enough to listen. The corridor beyond lay empty, washed in dim emergency lighting. No movement, no sound. The air smelled stale, faintly tinged with animal musk, but old, not fresh. Whatever had passed through here had moved on. She climbed out first, then helped Liam, sealing the hatch behind them as gently as she could. They moved like ghosts through the service corridor, staying close to the walls and avoiding open intersections. Claire steered them away from the enclosures, not because she heard animals, but because she didn't trust what she couldn't hear. Every open gate told the same story, unlocked. Human hands, again and again. Her anger burned beneath the fear, sharp and focused. This is what happens when teenagers play pranks with equipment that has to keep everyone safe, humans and animals. They reached a security junction where 3 corridors met, and Claire stopped. Mike usually stood here on night shifts, leaning against the desk with his coffee, pretending he wasn't half asleep. The desk was empty. His radio lay on the floor. Claire crouched and picked it up. "It is dead." She closed her eyes. "Mike," she whispered into the quiet anyway. Nothing answered. She didn't share her thoughts with Liam. Instead, she straightened and pointed down the corridor leading toward the staff exits. "That way, we keep moving." "Outside?" Liam asked. "Yes," she said, "as far outside as we can get." But whatever had started inside the zoo was already bleeding outward. And beyond the fences, beyond the concrete and steel meant to contain wild things, a city of millions waited, unaware that the rules separating them from the animals were beginning to fail. Claire tightened her grip on her son's hand. They weren't safe, but they were together, and for now that was enough.